Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, today we're talking about how you, as a federal employee, can maximize the annual leave payout that you're going to get when you retire from the government. And to be honest, a lot of federal employees rely on this heavily to get them through those first few months of retirement when their pension isn't paying yet. Because again, it takes OPM a while to actually process your application and start paying out your full pension. So this payout is a lifesaver for so many people. So let's talk about what it is, how to maximize it for you as a federal employee. So how does it work? Long story short, any unused annual leave you have on the books at retirement, you can get a check for when you leave the government. So for example, if you have 100 hours of unused annual leave at retirement, they will cut you a check for the amount of money you would have earned had you actually worked those 100 hours. So for example, if you have 100 hours and your pay rate, again, to keep things super simple, let's say your pay rate is $100 an hour. Well, 100 multiplied by 100 equals 10,000. So in this example, they'd cut you a check for $10,000 and say, hey, thank you for working. Here's your check for your unused annual leave at retirement. Okay? Again, they take how many hours you have, multiply by what you would have been paid had you actually worked that time. So let's do an example. Let's say you retire at the end of this year. And in January, there would have been an across-the-board pay increase. Will your annual leave take into account that pay increase? The answer is yes. If you had worked that time, had you worked that time, if you would have got that increase, then yes, it will be applied. Okay? If your 100 hours would have actually gotten you to that pay increase, then they'll apply it as if, again, the amount of money you would have earned had you actually worked that time. Okay? So that is how it works. Now, don't get too excited about, let's say, $10,000 or whatever the amount will be for you. You do have to pay taxes on the money, and you will have to pay federal taxes, FICA taxes. There's a number of things that have to come out, okay, first. So just keep that in mind. You're not going to get the gross number, but still, it's a very helpful amount of money to get you through those first little bits of retirement. Now, let's talk about for a brief second. Thus far, we've been talking about annual leave. Annual leave. There's another type of leave you all have, as you all know, and it's sick leave. Sick leave at retirement, you do not get a check for. Sick leave can actually be added into your years of service to increase your pension. I've got other videos on that, so go check that out. I'm going to focus on annual leave in this video. Okay? Again, sick leave adds into your years of service to increase your pension. Sick leave does that. Annual leave, you get a check for at retirement. Okay? So now that we know what the annual leave payout is, what are the things you can do to actually maximize that payout? Well, let's talk about it. First and foremost, retire near the end of the year. Now, why does this make a difference? As you know, you can only take so much annual leave into every leave year. Okay? For most federal employees, the most you can roll over to the next year is 240 hours. For some people, it's more depending on your position, but 240 is the standard. So, long story short, what many people do is the year before they retire, they take their 240 hours into that last year, and they don't use any of their annual leave. They accrue everything, and they retire before the end of that leave year. So they end up with, let's say, 300, lots and lots of hours, right? 300 some hours of annual leave, and they get a very, very large check at the end of the year. So that is one way. If you retire near the end of the year, but not into the next leave year, then you can get a payout for more than the classical limit of 240 that you can take into the next leave year. Again, the key is don't retire at the beginning of leave year, retire at the end of a leave year. Because at the beginning of leave year, you can only take your 240 hours or whatever it is, retire near the end of the year. And that's one of the biggest reasons people do retire near December 31st is to get as big an annual leave payout as they possibly can. Okay? Next, what's another thing you can do to maximize what this payout's going to be? The next is retire at the end of a pay period. Retire at the end of a pay period. Now, how this works is this. You accrue leave at the end of pay periods. So if you leave in the middle of a pay period, you don't accrue the leave you would have accrued during that pay period. So just by picking a retirement date that happens to be at the end of a pay period, you can accrue the last 2 weeks or so of leave to accrue, right? It's just a little bit, but every little bit helps in retirement, okay? So again, if you retire near the end of the year, you can accrue a ton of annual leave by then, okay? And if you retire at the end of a pay period, you're not leaving any or leave you would have accrued because you're retiring at the end of a pay period, and that's when you officially accrue the leave for each pay period, okay? So those are the biggest things to consider when thinking about your annual leave payout. Is save as much as you can, right? Save as much as you can. If you retire near the end of the year, then you can have 300 some hours depending on how you used it. And if you retire at the end of the pay period, you don't give up any of that last pay period leave that you want to accrue. Now, one strategy that some people take to take this to the next level is, let's do an example. Let's say you want to retire the end of June, okay? June 30th, okay? And you've got hundreds of hours of annual leave, okay? You could retire June 30 and just take an annual leave check, right? Whatever they pay, just you get the payout. Boom, right? A lot of people are happy with that. What some people do to take this to the next level is, instead of retiring June 30, starting June 30, they start using their annual leave. Those hundreds of hours, they start using them up, right? So their official retirement date is going to be later. Let's say it's in August sometime, right? Because let's say they had a month and a half of annual leave they've saved up, okay? So one perk about using your annual leave, instead of getting a lump sum, using it, is, of course, you get paid for this time because it's annual leave. You get paid for it. And while you're on leave, you accrue more leave. You accrue more leave. So that's one strategy to think about. Now, the biggest downside to this, a lot of people don't actually like doing it in practice because you're officially employed still. So there's some things you may have to take care of. You may have to work with bosses still to get some of these things approved. And many people have to come back into the office for their last day of work. So some people don't like using this strategy because it kind of keeps them tied and they want a clean break. So there's no perfect strategy here, but these are the things to consider when thinking about your annual leave payout and figuring out what it's going to be for you. So if there's any questions you have, throw them in the comments below. Tons of your fellow federal employees are great at answering questions, and there's tons of helpful resources for federal employees just like you in the description, so check those out. But I hope that's helpful. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time.